Hi everyone, my name's Declan McGlynn. Welcome to Friday Forum Live, Point Blank's weekly broadcast bringing you exclusive tutorials, artist interviews and industry insight every Friday live from East London. Today we're diving deeper into Native Instruments' new modular effects environment, Molekular, with our course tutor Daniel Herbert, and we're going to show you exactly how it works and sounds. So before we get into the modular madness, I just want to update you all on what's been happening at Point Blank this week. Our online term kicked off last month. London term starts this Monday, so hurry and get yourself enrolled. You can find out more about our London campus and courses at pointblanklondon.com. If you book now, you'll be just in time to take advantage of the 9 Roland IRA TR8s we've just installed in our school, so make sure you check out our courses. Our students can also take advantage of our massive 50% off Native Instruments Production Suite Complete, starting at only £215. That's all kicking off on Monday, and it's your last chance to sign up for one of our courses this weekend, so check it out. Speaking of Native Instruments, today we're looking at Molekular, their brand new modular effects plugin. We've already explored Molekular on our exclusive 4-part video series last week, so if you missed that, make sure to check that out too after the broadcast. And as we're live, keep your questions coming in the comments and we'll get to them later in the broadcast. So yeah, Dan, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So why don't you start by telling us a little bit more about Molekular and how it works?
Well, Molekular's, they built it as a kind of creative audio effect, and it's a multi-effects unit, but not as we know it, and it's got some really pretty awesome processing capabilities within it. Okay, so in terms of the overall structure of Molekular, it's built on a kind of modular system. Now, when you run Molekular, you run it within Reactor or Reactor Player, okay? And Reactor is another awesome software which we cover here at Point Blank on the sound design courses at the college and also online, and offers a phenomenal amount of processing. The only kind of downside with Reactor is a lot of people get scared because they think all you can do with it is actually just create your own effects with it or samples or whatever it may be. But actually it comes stacked with loads of cool synths. Now what Molekular essentially does is take all that power of Reactor and puts it into a really nice, neat interface, okay, and simplifies that interface right down. So often students find when they look at Reactor, there's hundreds, potentially hundreds of different synths you can actually use. With Molekular, it kind of simplified it right down. I kind of liken it to like guitar stomp pedals for the kind of future generation, really. So if we have a look at the screen, then I can kind of take you through the structure here. Okay, so in Molekular, we've got this kind of main display here, and this is where the kind of morphing features are. Okay, and we've also got macro controls. We'll come back to those later on. On the left-hand side, it's top left-hand corner, we've got the modulation section, which is pretty extensive and offers you 4 LFOs, 4 step sequencers, 3 envelope generators and also an envelope follower. So basically you can modulate any of your parameters using the incoming audio, and also a kind of logic section, and again we'll touch on that later on. On the right hand side we've got a routing section, and then really where the business end is these 4 slots at the bottom, and essentially here we've got 4 DSP units or effect slots, call them what you want, but essentially within each of these we can call up a variety of different effects or processors, and really this is where the power of Molekular is, in the actual processing and the sound that it creates. Now in each one you've got a specific selection of effects. So in the first one we've got what's known as FFT based effects. We can do some really cool sounds with that. The second section is kind of delay-based effects, angel delay, band delay, cloud delay. The third section here is kind of modulated effects, and the fourth here kind of got our distortions, as well as some kind of what's known as resynthesis. So whatever sound you put in, you can get something like a synthesizer sound back out, even if it's a drum beat. Okay, so let's kind of check it out. I've got a drum beat just loaded in here. Okay, and I'm going to come to effect 1. I've got dual comb loaded up, so we might as well begin with this. And this is essentially a comb filter. Okay, so pitch control. It's going to change the actual fundamental pitch. So we get some real kind of metallic textures coming out of this. Reso basically turns up the feedback, resonating away. Okay, and then we can kind of balance between resonator A and resonator B. Now this is the kind of really cool thing about Molekular, is it's just capable of really just mashing up the sound. As I said, it's not your normal kind of effects unit. It's really, really powerful, and you can really kind of process sounds to the max. So dual comb, basically 2 comb filters. You can mix between them. You can determine how the sound's processed, whether it's parallel or serial. So parallel mode, you hear both A and B. You mix between them. Okay, as well as kind of adjusting the balance between odd and even harmonics. Now, what I found when I first got hold of Molekular, now I should say actually this isn't the latest release, this is a kind of beta version, so you might notice I haven't got certain controls on it, but it's essentially the same. I just kind of found it great fun, just playing around with these controls. Some of the controls aren't directly mapped to a specific parameter. It's like a macro control, and this is what I meant by what it actually is a simplified version of Reactor. There's a lot more going on underneath, but they give you the cool controls to play around with. On each of these effects units, you're going to find a mix control, a wet control, and an out control. Now mix will just mix between dry and wet. Okay, wet just seems to do kind of similar thing, it just turns up the effects level. But because there's so many different configurations, it's actually really useful. And then out is basically the output of the effect slot. Okay, keep an eye on that one, because essentially if you turn down an effect slot and you've got a certain configuration in the routing window, you might find you don't get any audio out. Anyway, let's look at some of the other cool effects within the DSP-1 here. It's based on FFT technology. Now I looked at plagiarism and also Renosonatarium in the videos, which are available online. Also looked at spectral hold. Spectral shift and spectral smear are pretty cool. Now these FFT-based plugins are a bit greedy on the CPU, okay? So bear that in mind. So Resonatarium, Spectral Hold, Spectral Shift, Vocoder, they'll all use up a bit more CPU than standard effects. Okay, so let's just press play, turn up the output, and let's just go 100% wet. So same drum beat. At the moment these are links, let's go different left and right. So if you're into your kind of techno sounds, it's a great way of transforming your samples. Okay, and you can use it to create kind of pitched elements from drum beats, or just to kind of add interesting layers to your drum loops. Okay, so that's a spectral shift. It's a nice easy one to use because there are not many controls on it. Spectral smear, I should say. This is it's difficult to kind of explain this one, but essentially it kind of splits it up into all the kind of different frequency bands and then kind of combines above and below the certain frequencies. Let me again just put the mix all the way up. Get a little bit more random. And then above, just tighten up. So we're getting these kind of cloud-like textures coming out of this. Okay, so above and below, the kind of, it's basically a cut-off, this above and below, a crossover, then you've got envelopes above and below it. Okay, so that's spectral smear. Try say that when you've had a few beers. We looked at we looked at vocoder in the overview video as well. Okay, so that just kind of gives you a flavour of some of the processing of effect slot 1. We've also got a number of different effects here on effect slot 2. So effect slot 2 is delay based and kind of buffer related effects. Okay, so Trails is pretty cool plugin. Where essentially what we can start to do, let me just put it on the mix to 100%, so you just hear the actual sound of the effects. And again, something I'd really encourage you just to get your heads around it to start with, just put that mix to 100% and then you can hear the actual sound of it. So if I press play on here, it's basically capturing a little part of the audio. Let's just increase the buffer size. Yeah, it sounds pretty similar to the loop just kind of playing back. So what it does is just captures a little chunk of the audio and then loops it. Okay, and we can specify how long that chunk is by adjusting the size control here. Okay, and we can adjust how long we hear that sound for by adjusting the time parameter. Okay, now it's all a bit kind of clunky when you're kind of using the mouse for it, and to get the best out of Molekular, it'd be well worth making use of some form of MIDI controller. Now, obviously, this is going to be dependent on how you want to use it. You could actually do a whole gig just purely with Molekular. Okay, you could run samples off your computer, route it through, or you could actually process audio live. Okay, and that might be kind of quite an exciting thing to consider. If you're going to do it live, then you really want to kind of assign some form of MIDI controllers to it. Okay, now I've actually got Logic open up, and there's a number of different ways we can configure this. Within Logic, I'm just going to use the kind of quick learn function. So to call that up, just Command L. Okay, I can then waggle whatever control or press whatever control, and then on my controller, I can then just rotate the control. Okay, and now what did I do?
That was the play button.
That was the play button. I'll tell you what, let's do the play button and assign it there. I love it when things work. It's looking good. Let's try the size control here. No, we seem to have lost our kind of control over Molekular temporarily. That's a bit of an exciting one. It was working a minute ago. Let me just go to here. Just delete these.
Essentially, though, I mean, if you know, you could just randomly capture certain parts of a performance, bring the mix up, you know. Totally. Especially if it was just on a vocal, perhaps, or, you know.
Yeah,
that would sound amazing.
Well, this is it. So, I mean, it all depends on how you want to use it. If you listen to the overview videos online, you've got an idea how much processing it actually does. So we can convert beats into pitched elements, as well as using it as a kind of standard effects. And yeah, if you wanted to do a whole gig with it, then ideally you want to set it up with the controller. I'll give it one more shot with the kind of easy learn function here, and if it doesn't work, I will move on. And I'll show you another kind of way that we can assign it. No, it's not wanting to work for us. Never mind.
Good old easy learn.
Hey.
It's nice and easy. Yeah.
Brilliant. Cool. But let's tell you what I can show you is just about the kind of automation and make sure this actually works. So if you want to use it in a kind of production environment, then it might be you want to automate these parameters. Now, actually, the whole concept behind Molekular is it's got all this quite an extensive LFO section, so you can actually control all these parameters from the LFO. I'll come back to that after I've had a quick play with the automation. Let me just delete that, close that fella down. Now, it's pretty extensive and it's slightly scary as well. If I come down to the track in Logic, okay, and just choose Reactor 5 Effects, you can see why it's a bit scary. Okay, and it basically lists every single parameter. It looks like a bit of an OSC style formatted message. Okay, but absolutely every single parameter is there. So it might be easier if you're using Logic and less scary if we just turn on touch Okay, and then jump back, and then I just grab hold of size. Obviously I've got mix on here, okay, but you get the idea, you can see what's happening. Okay, as I record them in, let's put that back to read, drop back here, then you can see all the automated effects have been recorded in directly into Logic, okay, and we'll only hear it when I turn up the mix output, which is around there. Okay, so that's how you can do automation in Logic. As I said, the easiest way is just to click on touch, and then you'll see as soon as you record something in, you'll be able to get access to that parameter. Okay, good. Now, I've just turned that automation off, and let's open up the effect again. Come back here, because like I said, one of the cool things about Molekular is the LFO section here, and this basically allows you to control not every single parameter, but all the main parameters and all the parameters which do interesting things to the actual sound. So I don't know, let's just turn on lo-fi here. Okay, let's say, for example, I wanted that parameter just to kind of sweep down every quarter note. Okay, so I'm going to come up here to LFO, and I'm going to choose the sawtooth shape and just kind of adjust the shape here so it sweeps downwards. I can then set the rate of that, pretty much standard as in any other LFO you've probably come across. Okay, I'm going to do it to half a bar, and then to assign it, click on the assign button, come down to this control, and then we can just turn up the modulation amount. Okay, let's press play. Job's a good one. I like to know something's working now, and it's sweeping through. Just in relation to the, yes?
Sorry. So when you set the modulation amount, is that relative to where the parameter is set at that point, or is it irrelevant as you can go min-max, regardless of where the actual parameter is set?
It's always relevant to where that parameter is set, okay? And the LFO can be in two different modes, bipolar or unipolar. Now, you control that by this double triangle here. So if I click on that into unipolar mode, you'll now see when I press play, it will start at the top and then just go down to the original setting, okay? You can also invert shapes by either using this parameter here or on each modulation amount. Okay, that way. So it's really, really flexible, and you can modulate a parameter with actual loads of different modulation sources, okay? Just by double clicking on the name, and you've got an overview of all the modulation routing to that specific parameter, so DSP4 factor there, and I could then also modulate it with LFO2. Who knows what that's up to? Yeah, now we're getting a bit of extra movement. And if you want to get rid of all those modulation sources, just hit reset. Takes us back to where we were originally. Okay.
Yeah, cool.
So it's, in terms of routing modulation sources, it's really flexible, it's really simple, and it's really quick. And I found it really kind of quite straightforward. The other kind of main section here is the routing section, and this is actually pretty important, okay? Because depending on how this is set up is how the effects are routed through each other, okay? At the moment, I've just got this single in-series algorithm. I can't remember what they call it. I think Native Instruments call it a flow chart, but whatever. It's a way to set up these effects. So when they're all in series like this, then again, if you just keep your eye on it, it says 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means if I turn all these on, spectral smear goes into trails, which goes into dark forces, which goes into lo-fi. What that sounds like is pretty quiet. That's because I just need to do this. Not that exciting because I haven't actually played around these parameters. So what we can essentially do is change the order of these. Okay, so if I wanted spectral smear at the end, I can just grab hold of this one and then drop it towards the end, plonk it there. Okay, and you see it then swaps with number 4. And we get a different sound. Something a bit like a steam train, some would say. Now, that's again just processing in series. So now lo-fi is first, then into trails, then dark forces, then spectral smears. So always look out for that, and you can configure it whatever way you want. And then you can also determine how they're connected. Okay, so for example here, you can have the sound split into two. Half of it routed through effects 4, 2, and 3, and the other half routed through 1. Okay, or again, you can just move these around however you want it to work. When you're in the routing mode, you'll find a little scan button here, and then we can switch between the different effects outputs. Okay, this can be modulated, can be controlled however you want to do it, or if we want to kind of hear all these effects independently and not routed through each other, then we've got this kind of parallel algorithm here. Okay, so again, if I press play on that and just this scan, just effect 1, just effect 2, just effect 4. Okay, as it's a kind of parameter, if we click on assign, we're going to find a little modulation amount, and then we can just basically have that sweeping through. Let's slow it down a bit. The different sources. Okay, so the routing section again is really powerful because it makes it really flexible when it comes to configuring the effects. Okay, and if it's like a parallel, well, you could treat it like a kind of bus aux send configuration where you can adjust the wet balance here or wet dry, however you want to do it. Okay, good. So how are we doing for time?
We've probably got about 5-6 minutes left.
Right.
Just enough to look at the logic section, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. So in terms of the LFO section, I pretty much covered all of those in the videos. The logic section is a bit of a strange one because it might be something you've never come across before. And basically what it allows you to do is to set up additional functionality. And it's a really clever way of doing it. So as an example of this, I don't know, let's set up something like scale, okay? So what scale essentially allows us to do is to set up another kind of mod amount control. Okay, so we can actually modulate it using a MIDI control surface if it's up and running properly. So let's say, for example, I don't know, get LFO2, and let's get that going fairly fast. 16th, fine. That's on LFO1, and then come back to Logic number 1, and I'm going to choose, clicking on this menu here, and then choose LFO1. Okay, so that's kind of wobbling up and down at quite a fast rate. I then want to control the amount of it and either automate that or control it via my MIDI controller. Okay, so essentially I can set up 4 of these and assign it to basically any parameter. So again, probably the most obvious one here was lo-fi, which I've already got set up. Let's double click here. That's all looking good. And turn that fellow up there. Okay, so at the moment, no modulation. As I push up Y, then it modulates it more. Okay, obviously if that's a bit too hardcore, we could slow that rate up. Nothing wrong with being hardcore when you're working with a Molekular. Yeah, and to reset most parameters, just double click on them. Okay, and you think, well, why do I need to do that? Well, you can't MIDI control the modulation amounts which come up from the assign button, but you can MIDI control or macro control this parameter here. So that essentially works like a modulation amount control. I haven't really mentioned the macros, but they're really, really simple. Pretty much all software now offers some form of macro or smart controls, and essentially it allows you to simplify the whole interface right down, okay, and find some specific parameters which do cool stuff, and to assign them, just click on where it says M1, okay, and then you get, just like we saw when you're routing modulation sources to it, you can then increase the modulation amount, click on M1 again, and now when I adjust this, hang on, we should get, let's play, because it wasn't in play, we can now see those actual parameters moving. Okay. Again, be aware of that. Some of the actual parameter movements will only move when it's in play. Another kind of thing I should just point out as well, the whole timing of Molekular, how it syncs to your timeline, is dependent on the track just moving constantly. If you loop, I don't know, a bar or 2 bars or 4 bars and just play around with it, you'll find the LFO section might not work in the most predictable way, okay, and when you're using step sequence, for example. So in my Logic project, I've just looped constantly and I'm just pressing play and leave it running. And that's the most effective way to use it.
Cool, nice one. So I've got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
And we'll come to YouTube in a sec. I mean, this runs in standalone too, not just as a plugin, right?
Yeah, it can run in standalone.
So would you recommend using it? Because as a DJ, I'm just listening to it thinking, oh man, that would be insane, like on the dance floor.
Yeah.
If you could go out with all those crazy things and drop it back and stuff. But it seems to be quite CPU heavy. You know, would you recommend running it as processing live audio in that sense?
Well, the exciting thing is there is a little bit of latency on some of the cool plugins. Okay. So you'd have to factor that in.
So it's not for DJs, basically.
You could use it for DJing, but you have to be aware of the plugins which play around with the timing. But some of the effects are so cool that it wouldn't make any difference. So, for example, some of the Spectral plugins, Spectral Freeze, Spectral Hold, where you can freeze the sound. You can just get this cloud of sound instantly. That type of thing is just awesome. And it doesn't matter that it's actually 30 milliseconds later, okay?
And you never know, I mean, because it's native, they might end up hint programming some of this into Traktor.
Quite possibly.
So you never know in the future.
But I mean, when I've been playing around with it in Logic and Ableton, I've just literally shifted tracks slightly forward just to kind of compensate when I'm using those specific effects.
Sure, yeah.
It actually does tell you, and this is a really handy feature here, up in the routing section, it says latency, and it tells you the latency of it. So it'll tell you either in samples or in milliseconds, and then you know how much it's delaying that signal by.
That's useful.
Yeah, too right. But it's only really the kind of greedy. So if I switch to equalizer, see it goes down to 1 millisecond.
Right.
Okay, and that'll be cool. You'll get away with that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, a couple of questions. Robert Wolfman says the routing section is a bit like Ableton's racks. I don't know if you're familiar with Ableton's racks, but so I guess it kind of is. I mean, Ableton's racks, as far as I know, I guess through utility you could do parallel within a rack. So yeah, it is similar to Ableton's racks. Yeah.
Yep.
I think so. Yeah, it's people just complimenting my T-shirt. Thanks. Yeah, big Bob Marley fan. But yeah, we're just about to run out of time. So thanks, Dan, as always. That looks amazing and really powerful as well. I mean, just trying to think there's kind of endless things you could do. But gonna have to play with that over the weekend. Thanks again for tuning in. As always, make sure you stay locked to our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google+, and all of that good stuff. For the next week, we'll be posting free tutorials, interviews, and fun, exciting production-based stuff. So stay tuned to all of that. And we'll be back next Friday with another FFL, so we'll see you then. Cheers.